"Get that old man out of here," the boss yelled. "This is a boardroom, not a cleaning closet." But what no one knew was that the man named Mott was the one who truly owned it all. The next morning, when he walked into that same room, he wasn't holding a mop. He was holding the company. The sun rose over Meridian City, painting the skyline in gold and glass. The streets below glimmered with early traffic, black sedans, luxury SUVs, and the slow shuffle of people who kept the city running but were rarely seen. Inside the tall blue glass building of Davenport and Miles Corporation, the janitor's cart squeaked down a silent marble hallway. The old man pushing it moved slowly, deliberately. His gray uniform was clean, pressed, and simple. His name tag read Thomas. He had worked here for 30 years. Every night, he mopped the same floors, emptied the same trash bins, and listened to the same arrogant voices echo from the boardroom upstairs. To most, Thomas was invisible, part of the background, like the walls or the floor polish. But behind those calm eyes was something no one ever saw. That morning, the boardroom doors were wide open. The company's executives were arguing, papers scattered across the glossy table. A tall man in a navy suit stood at the head. Ethan Miles, the CEO, young, handsome, ruthless. "Listen to me," Ethan barked. "Our stock has crashed 12% this quarter. Investors are pulling out. We need new ideas, not excuses." He slammed his fist on the table, making coffee cups rattle. Thomas quietly entered the room with his mopping bucket. He moved to the corner, careful not to disturb anyone. But Ethan turned, his sharp voice cutting through the air. "Do you mind? Can't you see we're in the middle of a meeting?" The room went silent. All eyes turned to Thomas. He froze for a second, then lowered his head. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll come back later." Ethan scoffed. "Unbelievable. This is what happens when management can't even keep the janitors in line." A few executives chuckled nervously. Thomas quietly wheeled his cart out of the room, his shoes squeaking on the marble. He didn't say another word, just smiled faintly as the door closed behind him. In the hallway, a young receptionist, Maya, stopped him. "Mr. Thomas, you okay?" He smiled. "I've been mopping floors longer than that boy's been breathing. I'll be fine." She laughed softly. "You're too kind, sir." He winked. "Kindness costs less than pride, dear." As the day went on, Ethan's stress grew worse. His company, once one of Meridian's biggest tech firms, was falling apart. Stock prices were sinking, and rumors of bankruptcy spread like wildfire. That night, as everyone left, Thomas stayed behind as usual. The building was silent except for the sound of his mop gliding over the floor. He paused by the large painting in the lobby, the company's first headquarters, back when it was founded 50 years ago. Beneath the painting was a plaque, "Built on integrity, grown with hard work." Thomas smiled to himself. "If only you lived by those words, son," he murmured softly. He finished his shift, clocked out, and walked into the cool night air. His old car waited for him outside, scratched, faded, but reliable. As he drove away, the city lights reflected in his windshield, and his expression changed. The quiet, humble janitor was gone. In his eyes now burned the calm, confident look of a man who knew exactly what tomorrow would bring. The next morning came heavy with tension. Inside the Davenport and Miles Tower, the boardroom was full again. The investors had arrived. Ethan Miles stood tall at the head of the table, his smile practiced, his tone cold and corporate. He had stayed up all night rehearsing numbers, strategies, excuses. He had one goal: convince the investors that everything was under control. "Gentlemen," Ethan began, clicking through his slides, "this quarter was challenging, yes,
but with our new product line and restructuring, we'll bounce back stronger." A murmur of uncertainty rippled across the table. An older investor leaned back in his chair. "You've been saying that for a year, Ethan. Meanwhile, your share price has dropped from $80 to $25. What's your plan beyond speeches?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm working on it, Mr. Harris. We just need—" Suddenly, the boardroom door opened. Everyone turned. A janitor walked in. It was Thomas, holding his mop and a rag as always. Ethan's face twisted in disbelief. "Are you kidding me? Again?" Thomas froze, then smiled kindly. "Apologies, sir. I thought the room was empty." Ethan scoffed. "Do you enjoy interrupting me? First yesterday, now today?" Soft laughter spread across the room. "Go on, get out of here. You don't belong here." Thomas nodded slowly, his eyes calm and steady. "You're right, sir, but tomorrow I might." The room chuckled again, some uncomfortably, some mockingly. "Tomorrow," Ethan repeated with a smirk, "unless you plan on mopping your way to management, I doubt it." Thomas smiled faintly, as if he knew a secret no one else did. "We'll see, sir." He turned and left the room, pushing his cart down the hall, his footsteps echoing like quiet thunder. The laughter inside the boardroom faded quickly. Later that day, news hit the company like a lightning bolt. A mysterious investor had purchased a massive share of Davenport and Miles stock, nearly 38%, overnight. No one knew who it was. The boardroom buzzed with panic. Ethan stormed into his office. "Find out who's behind this," he barked at his assistant. "Now!" "Yes, sir," she said nervously, typing fast. Hours passed. Ethan paced the floor, shouting in the phones, demanding answers. Finally, the assistant returned, holding a sheet of paper. Her hand shook slightly. "Sir, the new majority shareholder is a holding company called TH Investments." Ethan frowned. "Never heard of him. Who owns it?" She swallowed. "A Mr. Thomas H. Green." He blinked. "Who?" "Thomas Henry Green." She hesitated. "The janitor, sir." The room fell silent. Ethan laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "You're joking." She shook her head. "It's all here, sir, registered and verified." Ethan snatched the papers, scanning the lines with growing shock. It was true. The janitor, his janitor, had quietly bought almost 40% of the company overnight. How was that possible?" Ethan stammered. His assistant whispered. "He's been investing in this company for over 30 years. When the stock fell, he started buying more. At the current value, he owns you, sir." Ethan's hands trembled. His mouth went dry. That night, the whole city talked about it. Financial news anchors called it the most shocking corporate story of the decade. An old janitor, a man no one ever noticed, had just become the majority shareholder of one of Meridian's biggest corporations. But Thomas didn't show up on TV. He didn't make a statement. He just came to work the next morning. Same uniform, same cart, same gentle smile. As the elevator doors opened on the top floor, executives stared, speechless. The man they used to walk past without a glance now owned the building they stood in. Thomas pushed his cart down the hall, stopped outside the CEO's office, and knocked once. Ethan looked up from his desk, pale, exhausted, shaken. Thomas smiled softly. "Morning, Mr. Miles. I believe we have a meeting today." You can't just—" Thomas placed a folder on his desk. "Oh, I can. As of last night, I own 51% of Davenport and Miles." The CEO sank back in his chair, speechless. Thomas smiled, eyes kind but steady. "Now, let's discuss how to clean this mess properly."
For a long moment, Ethan Miles didn't move. He just sat there, staring at the folder in front of him like it was a ghost from his past. Thomas stood calmly on the other side of the desk, hands folded behind his back. He wasn't smug. He wasn't gloating. He was just still. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice low and shaky. "You can't be serious. You mop floors for a living."
Thomas chuckled softly. "I mop floors to stay humble, Mr. Miles, but that doesn't mean I can't own the building I clean." Ethan blinked, unable to process it. This is insane," he whispered. Thomas sighed, taking a seat across from him. "What's insane, son, is how people look at others and decide their worth before hearing their story." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You see, I started here the year this company opened its doors, back when your father ran it. A decent man, fair and patient. He treated even the janitors like part of the team." Ethan looked up, surprised. "You knew my father?" Thomas nodded. "He was a good man. He gave me my first job when I had nothing but a high school diploma and a family to feed. Back then, the company's stock was worth a few cents. Every payday, I'd buy 1 or 2 shares. Just a little. Most people spent their money on fancy clothes or new cars. I bought stocks." "For what? You were just a janitor." Thomas smiled gently. "Exactly. I didn't need to impress anyone. I just needed to build something for my future. So I invested. Quietly, patiently, for 30 years. He paused, eyes soft but steady. "And when this company began to fall, when people like you started to sell everything, I bought more." Ethan's face turned pale. You took advantage of our failure." Thomas shook his head slowly. "No, son. I took advantage of your arrogance. You saw this company as your throne. I saw it as my home. You wanted power. I wanted stability." The room went silent. Outside, employees had begun whispering. The news had spread like wildfire. The janitor owns the company. Videos of Thomas walking through the lobby were already trending on social media. By noon, reporters camped outside the building. Cameras flashed, trying to catch a glimpse of the man everyone once ignored. Ethan's phone buzzed non-stop. Investors, journalists, even government officials wanted statements. Thomas finally stood up, buttoned his worn gray uniform, and said, "Tomorrow there'll be a board meeting. All department heads and investors. I'll be there, so will you." Ethan stammered. "You're not replacing me, are you?" Thomas tilted his head. "Would firing you teach you humility?" Ethan didn't answer. Thomas smiled. "Didn't think so. I'll see you in the morning." He turned and left, his slow steps echoing across the marble floor. The next morning, the boardroom looked different. Every executive sat upright, silent, tense. At the far end, the company's flag hung proudly, and beside it, the seat usually reserved for the CEO now held Thomas Green, dressed not in his janitor's uniform, but in a dark suit that fit perfectly. The transformation was subtle but powerful. He looked like a man born for respect, yet his calm voice still carried the warmth of humility. "Good morning," Thomas began. "Let's start with honesty. This company is not failing because of market forces. It's failing because of pride." He glanced at Ethan. "Pride blinds good men. Pride makes leaders forget that those who clean their floors keep their world running." No one spoke. The executive sat frozen, afraid to even breathe. Thomas continued. "When I walked these halls with my mop, I watched, I listened. I saw how people treated those below them, how they spoke, how they dismissed. And every time someone laughed at me, I smiled, because I knew something they didn't." He paused, his eyes sweeping the room. "That the quiet ones are watching. The janitors, the drivers, the secretaries, we see everything. We know who you really are." Ethan's eyes fell to the table. For the first time, he couldn't hide behind his confidence. Thomas took out a folder and placed it in the center of the table. Inside were financial plans, restructuring proposals, and an employee welfare program his team had been quietly preparing for months. One of the directors blinked. You already have a plan?" Thomas nodded. "I've been preparing it for years, waiting for the right moment. A company is not built by suits, it's built by sweat, loyalty, and time. We'll fix this place from the ground up." He looked at Ethan. "If you want to stay, you'll need to change the way you lead, starting today." Ethan swallowed hard. "And if I don't?" Thomas smiled faintly. "Then you'll clean out your desk. The choice is yours." Ethan sat back, defeated. For the first time he understood the weight of humility, something Thomas had carried all along with grace. The boardroom erupted into quiet murmurs. Every person there knew they were witnessing something historic, a reversal of power like no one had ever seen. As the meeting ended, Thomas rose, nodded to the board, and said, "Let's get back to work. We've got floors to clean, and I don't just mean marble ones." Outside, the lobby was packed with employees holding their phones up, recording, cheering. Thomas walked through them slowly, smiling humbly. Someone shouted, "Mr. Green, you're amazing!" He chuckled. "Just Thomas, please. Titles are too heavy to carry." Reporters crowded around. "Mr. Green, how does it feel to go from janitor to owner overnight?" He looked into the nearest camera, his eyes calm and kind. "It feels like proof," he said softly, "that success doesn't make you better than anyone. It just makes you more responsible." The crowd went silent. He smiled once more and walked out of the building, the sun catching on his silver hair as he stepped into the street, the same humble man, now carrying a company on his shoulders.
The next week, Meridian City was buzzing. Every newspaper, every blog, every social feed had one name on it: Thomas Green, the janitor who bought the company. The story inspired millions. Commenters called him the silent billionaire, the man who proved humility wins, and the investor no one saw coming. But Thomas stayed away from the noise. While the city glorified him, he was still the same man who drove home in his old car, watered the plants outside his small house, and made tea in the same chipped mug he'd owned for decades. The only difference now, he didn't have to clock in with a mop. He arrived at the Davenport and Miles headquarters not as a janitor, but as the chairman of the board. Yet he never used the corner office. He preferred the small staff room beside the elevator, the one that smelled of coffee and cleaning detergent. "Feels more like home," he told the new HR manager with a grin. Meanwhile, Ethan Miles was a different man too. The arrogant CEO was gone. The fall had changed him, stripped away his pride, and left behind something raw, something human. He spent weeks walking the office floor, talking to employees he'd never spoken to before. He learned their names. He asked about their families. He even started helping the janitorial team after hours, quietly wiping tables or changing bins. At first, people thought he was joking, but he wasn't. Maya, the receptionist, found him one night holding a mop. "Mister, what are you doing?" Ethan smiled softly. "Learning what I used to mock." She blinked, unsure what to say. He looked down at the mop. "I used to think this job was beneath me, but now I understand. It's the people doing these jobs that keep everything together." He set the mop aside and whispered, "Thomas was right. Pride is poison." Then came the day of the annual company meeting, a grand event held in the city's central convention hall. Every employee, investor, and partner was there. Over 1,000 people filled the seats. The stage was draped in blue and silver banners. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. When Thomas walked onto the stage, dressed in a simple suit and holding no notes, the entire room rose in applause. He smiled humbly, letting it fade before speaking. "Thank you," he began, voice calm and warm. "But please, don't clap for me. Clap for yourselves, for every person who built this company from the ground up. The janitors, the clerks, the drivers, the assistants. Without you, there is no Davenport and Miles." The audience quieted, many smiling through tears. Thomas continued, "I spent 30 years pushing a mop through these halls. I heard laughter behind my back. I heard whispers. But I also heard the heartbeat of this company. And it wasn't in the boardroom. It was in the people." He looked at the crowd, executives and janitors side by side, all listening in silence. He said, "I didn't buy this company to prove a point. I bought it to protect it, to remind everyone that leadership is not about titles, it's about service." He paused. "When I was young, I promised myself I'd never forget where I came from. So I'll tell you this. I may sit in the chairman's seat, but in my heart, I'll always be a janitor. Because sometimes the ones cleaning up the mess understand the business better than the ones making it." The room erupted into applause, long, loud, heartfelt. After the meeting, Thomas found Ethan standing near the back of the hall. The young man looked humbled but determined. Thomas smiled. "Good speech, huh?" Ethan nodded. "It was perfect." He hesitated, then said softly, "You saved me, Thomas. I don't deserve this job, but I'll earn it this time." Thomas studied him for a moment, then placed a hand on his shoulder. "Good, because I'm retiring." Ethan froze. "What?" Thomas smiled. "I'm old, son. I've spent my life building. Now it's your turn to lead, the right way." Ethan's eyes widened. "You trust me after everything?" Thomas chuckled. "Trust isn't given, it's tested. You've been tested enough." He pulled an envelope from his coat pocket. "This is your new contract. No bonuses, no luxuries, just a fair salary and a long list of responsibilities." Ethan took it, eyes wet. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Thomas smiled faintly. "You can thank me when you make the janitors feel as important as the board members." They both laughed softly, a rare, genuine sound. That evening, after everyone left, Thomas walked through the now empty lobby one last time. The floors gleamed under the warm lights, polished to perfection. He stopped at the same corner where he'd once been yelled at for mopping during a meeting. He smiled. He placed his old mop and bucket beside the wall, clean, gleaming, and ready for someone new to use. As he turned to leave, Maya appeared behind him. "Leaving already, Mr. Thomas?" He smiled. "Just Thomas, dear. Always has been, always will be." She looked at the mop, then back at him. "You're really retiring?" He nodded. "It's time. The floor is clean now." She smiled tearfully. "We'll miss you." Thomas looked around the grand lobby. The glass walls, the polished floors, the logo shining above the reception desk. "Take care of this place," he said softly. "Not just the building, the people." He walked out into the golden evening light, the city humming softly around him. As he reached the doors, he turned back one last time. Through the glass, he could see Ethan shaking hands with employees, laughing with the janitors. No cameras, no pride, just gratitude. Thomas smiled. Looks like it's in good hands now. Then he stepped into the street, blending into the crowd like he always did. Unnoticed, humble, but quietly powerful. Because real power never needs to be seen. And real success doesn't shout. It shines quietly, like polished marble under soft light.